Hello, my name is George MacKay and welcome to Distraction Tactics Film Club.
Our first question for you was basically, what have you been doing to keep yourself distracted in the lockdown, and how are you?
I've been sort of doing lots of things which I've sort of said I've never had time for. So kind of watching things which I've always talked about. So I've just finished last night The Wire, which I've never, not the whole, but the first season. And and I know there's many seasons, but that is a TV show that I haven't watched much telly, but that everyone talks about and says how amazing it is. So it's amazing.
I'm ashamed to admit I've also still never seen it. And I think it's one of those things where because people love it so much, it almost made me quite immaturely react against that and be like, oh.
Yeah.
But is it worth it? Was it worth it?
It's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's so satisfying, all the kind of narratives coming together and everything. And yeah, it's just great. It's really, really good. So I'm doing that and doing, just also taking the time to be with family who are here, which you don't often get to do that. Doing a fair bit of cooking and doing a wee bit of writing and just sort of all the things which, when you're working on something else, kind of get put on the back burner.
It can feel less important, but actually matter loads.
Yeah.
So firstly, what attracted you to the role, and when did the shoot happen? It must have been a while ago, I guess.
It was a while ago now. I think what first attracted me to the role was Justin Cazelle as a director. I don't know if any of the film club have seen Snowtown or Macbeth. He also did Assassin's Creed, but I think his style is more suited to, or he was kind of, Snowtown basically is the most affected I've ever been in the cinema, and was just desperate. I was just desperate to work with him. And so the opportunity of working with Justin, and then also the part kind of came at a time where I was wanting to sort of find out a lot about sort of you're in your mid-20s, you want to know, who you are, where you want to go, where you're from, what made you, what you want to do, all that kind of stuff. And my dad is Australian, and he's a big part of who I am, and a big part of who he is. I never really thought to investigate because of the distance, and was always felt quite removed. So the idea of playing a young man who's in that similar kind of running from his past, looking at his past, using it to what he wants to do, kind of maelstrom, in a sort of Australian punk kind of mix up with, Justin Cazelle at the helm was everything.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely sounds like quite attractive prospect.
I wanted to ask, yes. Oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, my parents are South African, and it's so interesting having that kind of connection with the place, but you also are a generation removed. And it must have been really nice to sort of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, it came from, because also there was so much about the process with Justin that was I guess it's different for a non-Australian audience. It works on a double level. It can either be its own story about a bloke called Ned and all of that world, or in Australia, there's obviously the kind of relationship between who Ned Kelly is and the myth of Ned Kelly, and in sort of sometimes embodying that, sometimes poking fun at that, sometimes taking it apart, sometimes committing to it. I had to Justin wanted me to have a much more kind of in-depth and sort of expansive, I guess, position on Australian culture. So it was loads of films to watch, loads of music to listen to, loads of books on it. And just getting through all of that culture, there was a bunch of things which pinged out about my dad that were oh, that's why his humor is the way it is. Oh, okay, I see that. That's why that's funny. I get that now, where I never did. It was just his humor.
I was going to ask you about what Justin asked you to prepare for this role, because it was quite an extraordinary process. Could you talk us through it a bit?
Well, the first thing was Justin just offers up the opportunity to go in. He's like, if you want to, I want you to immerse yourself in this. And I remember there was this inspiring but intimidating email that came through that after we first spoke that just said "to do." And it was a page of Aussie cinema to get kind of culture, humor, tone, character, all of this stuff like Waking Fright, The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, Chopper, Romper Stomper, so many different films, Picnic at Hanging Rock. And then there was a page of Aussie music and a lot of punk music. So put the humor of Paul Kelly in the folk songs. Then you've got The Birthday Party, Nick Cave's first band, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, the Saints, the Drones. Gareth Lydiard is a kind of the singer and one of the main writers of the Drones, and he's a musician that kind of was a big reference for Ned in terms of the sort of poetic aspect they wanted with the character. So there's all this music to listen to, as well as like indigenous music too, just a mix. And then I kind of went down an Irish version of that as well. We're big into Luke Kelly and the Dubliners and all of the Irish kind of culture that was the part of Ned. And then then there was the list of things to do in terms of and that was come to Australia early. I want you working on a station. I want you working with horses. You need to write every day because this man is trying to articulate himself and trying to be a wordsmith. So write poems, write histories, write thoughts, diaries, everything, character, just write. And then I went and lived with Justin and Essie. I went and chopped wood in Tasmania because there was going to be a scene which never was there about, where the first time you see Ned, he felled a tree. But even that was like an experience. And I didn't get to a station, but I lived on a farm for a wee while with friends and spent time with horses. And I went to Ireland because for a time we were going to play him Irish rather than Australian. I went to where his dad was from and rode horses there and met the traveller community as well, which I thought had, equivalents to the sort of the Kelly gangs situation. And then there was books to read as well, colonial history of Australia, history of Ned. And then also, lastly, down we formed a band. There was like a 4-week pre-production rehearsal with everyone. And Justin would
tell what the name was.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it.
Well, we were called Fleshlight, and he booked us a gig in Melbourne, and it was, you've got a gig in 3 weeks. You guys need to come up with a name and a song and a set of songs. So we wrote 8 songs or something, and that was our rehearsal for 3 weeks, was to go in, and the boys wear dresses in the gang. It's kind of like their armor, which kind of, there's lots of sort of things attached to it, but we'd go in, we'd put our dresses on, and we'd jam punk songs for like 3 weeks, and then played this gig. And that was like, and then a couple of days later we began shooting, and that was sort of the attitude of everything, was like that kind of aggressive, confused, angry sort of swagger is what they wanted.
Dude, it sounds amazing. How was the gig?
It was great. Like it was so much fun. We just came off it like, this was the best thing ever. Like, it was so much fun. And we played in a bar. Like, it wasn't kind of, from the film.
Do you remember where what the bar was in Melbourne?
It was the Gasso in Melbourne in Collingwood.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was it's just in the downstairs bit. It wasn't like the main stage.
Yeah. We were in Melbourne earlier this year. We went there for.
Really?
Yeah, the guy that's promoting our gig owns that place, so we went there.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
We had like a sort of party thing there, which was really fun.
That's mad.
On the other side, that's where we got to meet up. We all got to go to Melbourne, and you guys can play, and I can just cheer.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, there's 2 songs in the film. There's like two of our songs wound up. There's a scene where you first see my character and he's in a boxing match, and that was one of our songs. And then as the credits roll, they play another song, and that's our song as well.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So it was good fun. It was like, but it was so clever. Justin just wanted us all listening into each other in the way that you have to with music, and that sort of peripheral understanding, and and also opens you up as well, because you're songwriting together, and it's sort of exposing.
It's like a super vulnerable place and potentially embarrassing place. But yeah, the whole process sounds incredible, and you must have learned so much as well. Is it always like that? Was this role particularly immersive?
This is the most immersive experience I've ever had on a project, and I think
a degree in almost like a degree in Australian culture through the eyes of
yeah. It's sort of like it's funny because it's so interesting kind of when it's something that I never thought of, and also what I saw as Australian as a kid is like, without kind of poking holes in what's good about the place, it's an amazing place. But it's like, when I went as a kid the few times, I was like, the weather's great, everyone plays sport, everyone's happy, this is great. And you sort of, but then without wanting to sort of take it apart for the sake of it, you learn. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know the colonial history until I researched. That it's made up of, the the British sort of colonized and settled there. But the fact that all the states were penal colonies other than South Australia, like, and where these people came from, and the disputes that were going on in the places where, you know, the Scots, English and Irish all traveled across, and the reasons for traveling across, kind of really does give you a sort of, and again, it's all an assumption, but like it gives you some form of understanding as to why, you know, like even their humor, it's this amazing gallows humor, but I think it's because it was only relatively a few generations ago that people were first settling there for a second time, you know, other than the indigenous. And that was built, that land was built on such hardship, you know, and even the treatment of the indigenous as well is so dark that to sort of get through that Wild West place, you have to sort of have this hardness and an irony that sort of allows you to deflect it. You know, there's that sort of boxer kind of
tactic,
yeah. So yeah, it's fascinating.
And actually, that's why Justin said he wanted you, was because he wanted you to play against type, didn't he? He said he wanted.
Yeah. He said he'd like. I think what he wanted, the idea of Peter Carey's beautiful book that this is the film's based on, is you know, it's because of Peter Carey being Australian. I think he was looking at, you know, what does it mean to take the voice of a symbol and to create his own version of, you know, it's when Ned Kelly is sort of recognized as a bit of an outline, if you know what I mean, as a silhouette, to kind of go, well, why have we chosen that silhouette? And now that we just have the silhouette automatically, who was this man inside of that? And has created a kind of, is a mixture of like kind of, is played on the idea of creating his own version of that. And it's a mixture of his own truth, and it's the truth that is known about the man. And I think, you know, just he's kind of represents a very typical, I guess, black and white version of masculinity, particularly. And I think Justin wanted there to be a sort of articulacy and a vulnerability to Ned, and then sort of brutalize that. And I think because I'm not particularly hard, I don't really fit that kind of hard man silhouette in the first place. It was like he wanted to kind of, you know, me to concentrate on the beginning bit, which felt closer to, I guess, my own temperament and personality, and build layers and layers and layers of like, if you know, if you take something that is, if you take anything and whip it hard enough, at what point will it bite back, you know? And that sort of look at why, you know, why people react. And so, yeah, so it was sort of a case of, even that was another part of the research, was changing my body and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I remember even him saying like, he said, don't be nice. He said, don't be so nice. Try it with me. Just see what it feels like not to talk. Like when you don't, you know, when we're talking to it, you know, just don't say anything. Make people come to you and just see how that power feels. Like, you know, we were all saying when we got on, we're being so polite to each other. Like, oh, sorry, are you? It's nice to meet you, eh? But he was like, if you just sit there and let someone come to you, what does make them squirm? You know, and how easily that can be done, and you know how you can just on that feeling.
How much? That's such good advice. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Wow, never thought of that.
How much you learn about the other person when by just leaving that silence and leaving that space.
Yeah, but I think it's like you watch Louis Theroux documentaries, he just doesn't say anything, and people start going, what I meant by that was, and actually what I meant that because, and that thing happened to me, and that's the reason I think that, because, and you sort of, people like start unraveling in front of you, and it's quite a powerful position to take, to just sit back.
Have you, how much of that do you think you take, did you leave it all there, or have you sort of, has any of that crept into who you are post making the film?
No, I think I don't think I've sort of I haven't used that sort of side of stuff. I think that the you know, it was, of course, it's make believe, it's a film, but it was quite an extreme experience, and I think the extreme, sort of physically and emotionally going to extreme places, I've taken that with me. I sort of know I kind of went beyond certain limits that I had before, and I now know like limits have been pushed, and I feel, I don't know, I feel like I know where those new limits are, and sort of how it feels to be within those, you know, how much further you can actually go, or when you're cutting short, or in whatever it is. Even in research, you know, you kind of go, God, mate, there's a lot that you can do. It's not just learning your lines. You can go to these places, you can find out, and some of it won't be of, be of literal, tangible kind of use is the wrong word, because everything is useful. But I guess that's what I took with me, as a sort of expansion of my understanding of the process. But still, I wouldn't just sit in silence for so long.
That's not something you've deployed since then, just to fuck with someone.
Yeah.
We wanted to encourage people to see the movie, and it's not an easy movie. So could you just tell us a bit about why you think people should see it, and what you're proud of in it?
I think well, I hope people will see the movie because partly because of that, because it's in a way it's a difficult sell, because it doesn't pander to any I'm trying to think of the right word. It is made solely to be the creative vision that it is, and there has been no compromise artistically or in this experience and story that Justin's wanted to put across. And the attitude with which it was made is so purely for the piece, and I think that's really commendable. And I think that if people are still open to kind of offerings like that, it will mean that we can kind of widen the sort of what's acceptable. I think because of course there is an element, this is an industry, and industry needs to sort of have a turnover, and the things that are more likely to make a turnover are the things that are more likely to get made, and it sort of narrows what we receive, I think, where in a way, although it's a shame that this isn't at the cinema, this time and way in which we can view things offers people the opportunity to take a chance on stuff. Because it's simply, it doesn't cost as much. Like the cinema is expensive. It's a journey. You might do one trip a week, so you and your partner, so you want to choose something that you both like. But this allows people to kind of just take a chance on something. And I think, and I hope that they will with this, because it was made purely with the creation in mind.
Yeah, I mean, the last question we wanted to ask, because it's a film club, and we've found people have been incredibly connected and united over this, and brought together, and it's generated this amazing spirit. But is there something that you particularly love about movies, or what is the power of movies that gives you that amazing connection, do you think?
I think it's so many things at once. I think first and foremost, whenever you put on a film, I get such excitement when it kind of goes black and the titles start to roll. Even if it's like, the studio titles, it's like working titles or Universal. And sometimes with a film, they would have changed that. So like the Universal sign will have a slightly different soundtrack, or they would have made it, they would have changed the coloration of, I'm like, oh, okay, that's the first hook into the world. And that beginning of a film, when that silence before the first shot, that for me is just endlessly exciting, the possibility of that beginning. So I think there's that. And then in terms of people connecting, it's all stories, like it's all, what you sort of, what what you experience. And this is like, it's like meeting new people when you sort of meet new characters, and there's things that you can take from that all of the time, from someone else's, the way in which they react in a situation or experience a situation, or the situation itself. It gives you insight as to, oh, I feel like I would act in the same way, or I wouldn't do that at all, or how would I act if I was in that place? I think that constant, sort of, it's a form of sharing. So I think that's what I get from it. It's storytelling.
You're right. That first glimpse, that first window into like what the world's going to be, even if it's a like slightly adapted studio, image at the beginning, it's always so exciting.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for chatting about it. We've been really because obviously the idea of this was just to do something nice to allow people to who maybe by themselves or whatever, to watch films, use that as an excuse to kind of travel a bit and escape. But then also we want to I think the films that I'm always inclined to watch are way more left and much darker, and so this is exactly obviously in that vein. But I think we've been sort of cautious with what we're recommending of thinking about not wanting to go too dark for people. But I think so that it's like with the US, we chose Eternal Sunshine over Mulholland Drive, for example, because you know, just in wanting to feel like this was a kind of positive escape. But it's really hard because I think this is exactly the kind of film that I love and would want to watch and would want to recommend. But I know that there's a limit to how far some people will go. So it's nice to be able to chat about it and to push people towards it. But you know, with the caveat that
it's dark, it's brutal.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man,
It's got the best shootout scene in the world ever.
And how many people can say that, eh?
Yeah. Oh, George, thank you so much. It's been brilliant.
Thanks for having me, and I guess hopefully speak to you guys soon down the way with perhaps another film or something.
That would be amazing if that's all right. Thank you so much, dude, and good luck with your writing. And
cheers. Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. Likewise. Good luck with the songwriting, and see you soon, Charlotte.
Bye.
Best of luck, guys. Bye bye.
Take care.